Alex Kurtzman, unemployable, seeking talent, says for 35 South African rands, are we near a point where total resets form? The studios have to consider that they have to consider total resets to repair the damage from the past 10 years. And that actually brings us quite neatly to a rumor that I saw published in Bounding into Comics here that I thought we could talk a little bit about, because many of us, we have previously discussed the possible solutions to the problem that you have right now with the MCU, which was amazing for 3 seasons, but then it's veered off course. Some, like Tom, feel that, oh, you just have to reboot the whole thing, there's no salvaging it. Others feel, like myself, feel that, oh, you can just change direction and this thing can still be salvaged. Now there's a new rumor that suggests that Marvel will use the upcoming Secret Wars to soft reboot the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This would follow the same thing, the same storyline as not the original Secret Wars. Of course, that's too much of a classic that they could try to do that. But the rebooted Secret Wars storyline from the comics that they used to reboot the Marvel comics, where basically they took bits and pieces from different continuities and different universes and created a new mishmash Earth that they followed going forward. And apparently, then, this is the plan going forward for the MCU as well, following Avengers Secret Wars. Now, of course, we have rumor alert, everything like that. This is in no way confirmed. These are pure online rumors from various online tipsters. But that's where we are right now, apparently, that the MCU is considering a soft reboot, mishmashing different continuities together to create a new MCU going forward. Mr. Chato, let's begin with you. Assuming for the moment that this is true, it may not be, but assuming that this is true, do you think this is what the MCU needs right now?
Can't remember who said it, but they mentioned that it might have been Chris, actually. Chris Gore said, "Put it away for 2 years. Get people kind of hyped up. Get your best writers together. Figure out what you want to do, and then relaunch it." That's that to me is the only available strategy.
Well, my whole thing is why I keep saying that is because the studios this is the first time in history I think that they've really overestimated the audience, because normally they think we're dumber than we actually are. And I'm not saying the audience is dumber. I just think that they're tired of it and they're not going to give a shit if you just do some kind of reset within the universe that's already there. And this is what I keep arguing with the Snyder folk about, because to them, the Snyder films are only those 3 films, right? They don't understand that the way the general public sees this is Jason Momoa is still the same fucking character he was in Justice League, right? And the same thing goes for each and every other one of these characters. That's one of the main reasons why people turned away from all these films. They don't give a fuck who the director is. They just know they don't like this take, right? That's what they know. And it's the same thing here with Marvel. You can do some kind of thing, but as long as you keep the same actors around and all that kind of stuff, people are not going to care because they'll think it's still the same thing. And that's why 9 times out, and I know this for a fact because I dealt with people on a daily basis in a video store. And I've told this story before, and I think it's the main one that people need to remember, is that when Batman Begins came out, people didn't get into it right away because they thought it was a prequel to the Michael Keaton films. They didn't realize it was a completely new reboot because it had only been like 5 years or whatever it was, 6, 7 years at the most, since the last Batman movie. And that was 20 some years ago. At this point, people are a little bit used to, less time breaks, but you still got to give people a little bit of break to realize, okay, we're starting something new here, right? Like they were able to understand that with Bond a little bit when you started with Casino Royale all over again, and they kind of revamped that franchise a little bit. That's what you need to do, is just kind of revamp it. And the superhero movies could work like Bond anyway. You don't really have to reboot it all the time, as long as you don't bog yourself down in this stuff that's, yes, you can have a connected universe, but not everything has to connect so much. Like just with the Star Wars stuff that you guys were just talking about for 90 fucking minutes, about like this whole thing of like, if you haven't seen all this other homework and you don't know what's going on. That was the biggest problem with Doctor Strange, is the audience went in at the very least expecting a sequel to Doctor Strange, at the very most expecting a sequel to Doctor Strange and Spider-Man No Way Home. And what they got was a sequel to fucking WandaVision that they didn't watch. So they walked out confused and decided, fuck the Marvel Universe, I'm done. Because at that point, they had already checked out of all the other stuff that they didn't care about. We know that because Eternals bombed, Shang-Chi bombed, Black Widow bombed, you know, like before that. And then after that, everything else has bombed since. They're fired up.
They absolutely screwed the pooch on that. And as for what they're doing right now with Secret Wars, all I will say is that's a bold strategy. Let's see if it works.
Well, it's an old strategy because it was technically done before in the 90s with Spider-Man in the Spider-Man cartoon show. They actually had a short arc called Secret Wars where Spider-Man was brought in to pick other Marvel characters within his universe. But then after that, they have Spider-Man meet all the other Spider-Man from various other universes. And to solve a problem with a Peter Parker symbiote Carnage symbiote thing. And so they already tested the waters on that. And it seems like they're just doing an inversion of it where instead of, you know, whatever character who is selected to start picking the other Marvel heroes of who they want to work with, it's going to be picking them across all the universes as the tail end of that arc, as opposed to it being at the forefront. I think it's a pretty convoluted thing to do. And yeah, it's risky. And I don't know how they're going to stick the landing on that.
Well, we already know that they don't even really have half a clue of what they're going to do yet necessarily. Sorry, Andre, I was just going to say, because I was pre-predicting a lot of this shit before that they weren't going to end up being able to get rid of Hugh Jackman. And we're already hearing rumors that not only is he going to, we already know he's going to be in Deadpool 3, but we're hearing rumors that he signed up for a few more things and he's supposed to even be in the Secret Wars movie.
I heard that.
Because they can't get past it. They don't know how to fucking do this shit.
Apparently, the Deadpool 3 is going to be the main lead-in to Secret Wars,
which I think is a mistake. They should have kept it separate. I'm sorry, Andre.
Yeah, and that's perfect. Well, again, we'll see what works, because this is something that has the potential to be a spectacular failure. That is the more likely outcome. Or if they have the right talent attached, they may be able to pull something magic out of the hat here, because this gives them actually the opportunity to find the perfect team for the Fantastic Four that you can even take out of the 60s. You can bring back Hugh Jackman for Wolverine and have him be Wolverine for another 10 years. You can bring out the best of everything. You can bring back Iron Man. You can James Bond him. You can do the X-Men right, continuing with like the more comic book accurate Juggernaut and everything. This is their magic pill to solve everything. The only thing that they need is the right person. If they had a James Gunn right now, honestly, I would think this was going to be an amazing success. I would be super excited for this if James Gunn was there to hold Kevin Feige by the hand and say, yeah. Now you're going to get the credit, but I'm going to tell you what to do now. If that was the case, I'd be more comfortable than I am with James Gunn over at DC.
That we can agree with.
I think less confident in what he's doing.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. James Gunn belongs with Marvel. He can have more fun with Marvel characters than with DC characters.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, just like, and I also think that's why he brings in like Batman's son, because that way that's how he can have like the fucked up family dynamics, which works great in Guardians of the Galaxy. Don't know how great it's going to work for Batman.
Yeah,
And
that we can also
when
agree on.
Marvel doesn't have James Gunn, because James Gunn, he has buggered off to DC, where I don't know that he's the right fit. And who the hell are they going to choose instead? Who can replace James Gunn? Not any Rick and Morty writers who apparently have been fired, and that's a good thing. But who do they have that can possibly replace them? Kevin Feige has shown that he can't do this on his own. So
Terry
that is what
Metalis.
has me worried.
They're bringing Terry Metalis in.
I don't know about that, but no, I don't disagree with you, Andre. And
I
honestly,
think, you know what? If that's
I don't. I'm not saying that's
if
not a
that
bad
were to
idea.
happen, if that were to happen, I'd feel better.
But that all aside, I agree with you in a sense that I just want to say, like, I think Feige should shut it down. I think he should check out while he at least is somewhat still the most, successful producer of all time with this thing. Shut this thing down, retire, hand the mantle off to somebody else, like you're saying. Obviously, it's not going to be James Gunn. I don't know if Metalis or somebody like that would be the right choice at this point. Somebody. And then at that point, give it a little rest. Let them sit down and figure this thing out. Figure it about around the same time DC is going to be starting its reboot. Marvel could be rebooting itself, and they could actually still do a slam dunks. It's like, yeah, we're rebooting, but we already had our 10 years of success or 10 plus years of success. DC is trying for the third time to get off the ground. And that would really be, even if Feige was still around, just giving the reins to somebody else to take over and let them kind of bring a fresh voice or fresh, viewpoint to this. That's the only chance they got at really kind of sticking it to James Gunn anyway, even though it's not Feige's fault or Gunn's fault that, he's not there at the end of the day. That's not my point. But what else are you going to do at this point other than tit for tat? Right.
Yeah,
they're always going to be compared to each other no matter what.
My fear is that this is just going to look like the Umbrella Academy.
Ooh.
Well, that's the sad part, is it is getting to that point with Marvel. It's starting to feel like,
and again, I'm going to repeat what I've said before. I think the key to making this work, if it can work, is to do exactly what the comic books did. Here's the Neil Byrne run of Spider-Man. It's got a look, a style, a tone, a humor, and that's the run. It's not the Thanos run. It's not about the bad guy. It's about the creative people behind it, kind of like Nolan. I can see, I can watch the Nolan Batman. I can watch the Jackson Lord of the Rings. And to me, that's the experience you want out of this. And to a certain degree, I mean, we're talking, that's the Zack Snyder route either. But that doesn't mean that idea doesn't work. It just didn't work with him. And so maybe people are afraid of repeating that auteur, problem. But right now, I think, if we got, a specific director involved in the Fantastic Four Galactus run, here I am talking about no Thanos, but you'd go, okay, I get it. It's going to have a look. The costumes are going to look a certain way. And then another person comes in and then it's all, they're wearing leather outfits or whatever it happens to be. So we have a coherent sense of what the package is going to be. That's what comics have always successfully done, right? When McFarlane came in to do Spider-Man, that was the era. And I think that's the only way to save it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
and recast the cast. Like, again, bring in a new Iron Man. Like, who cares?
And it's okay to have somebody to have a singular vision to run the entire thing, kind of like like a show, basically, like a showrunner, because that worked for the first few years of Marvel. But the difference there is those first 5 or so years weren't bogged down in all the other stuff it is now, and the politics and all that other nonsense.
We need to loosen up, and the lesson could be from manga and anime, in that manga is actually the main product, and the anime supports that. And then every once in a while, they come out with a full animated movie or a live action movie. and they're really, really good at it. And here we're talking about, oh no, Disney Plus is diluting the movies and blah 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 blah. Actually, if they took the anime manga model, it could be done because they know what they're doing. The what was the one of the most recent animes and mangas that came out? It's the girl, the sister, who's also a demon. Oh, Demon Slayer. There you go. They have the manga, they've got the anime, and then they brought out a movie version of the anime that completely sold out wherever it played. And it's a they just know what they're doing because they know how to market what it is they've got. Whereas Marvel and DC just haven't figured it out. Now, DC has done a much better job over their history with the Batman series, right? Script.
Mhm.
I mean, and also obviously Tom, you all, I mean, there's some brilliant animated series. They know how to do it. I don't see why they wouldn't
Because that's
copy.
old school. Like, that's the thing, is now everything has to connect, unfortunately. And that takes me back to what I was ranting about earlier
But it
with
still can
WandaVision.
connect.
It
Yeah, you just
can,
have
but
pockets of connections as opposed to making the whole thing from beginning to end
exactly.
connect.
That's correct. That's
See,
what
and
I'm
this is what I was
talking
going to
about.
say. Yeah, is like, because I was reminded of this, and because we've talked a little bit about this recently, how movies can't stand on their own anymore, but yet they used to be able to do this all the time. Shit, just as recently, I just rewatched all 3 of the Expendable films because the 4th one's coming out this weekend. Those 3 movies are made like old school films. Yes, they're sequels to each other. Yes, there's things in them that build upon things that were before, but guess what? You can watch any one of those 3 movies and not see any of the other 3 and know what the fuck is going on,
Yeah.
because they're not
Same with
set
the
up in a
John Wick.
way.
John
Yeah,
Wick is the same.
exactly. Because they're not set up in a way that you have to have been bogged down in all this history. You just have to have a basic idea. And it's like Marvel has forgot the fundamental lesson that Stan Lee always pushed, and that was every comics is some kid's first comic. You have to get them up to speed in some way that does not stop the story, and it's easy to do. All you do is just throw in lines of dialogue in the middle of sequences of action and other things to kind of get the viewer up to speed. In fact, a lot of shows start like that anyway, so that's why I don't understand how they forgot that. It's like they do this constant thing to hook you in by showing you an action sequence that takes place later in the show or sets up all the action in the show as it is, but like it's like they forgot how to do the rest. It's like not everything has to be dependent on what comes before and sets up what comes after.
Well,
Right?
that's because they're taking a larger story and using that as chapters, as opposed to taking a look at the chapters and saying, well, how can we make this into its individual story?
Yeah.
And that's what they actually ended up doing quite well up into the Avengers. Is, oh yeah, they have their own individual stories, and each one had a tag that said, okay, yeah, this could be something else happening in the background, and it all comes to a head to forming the Avengers. And it worked quite well because, again, you can watch Iron Man 2 without having to watch Iron Man. You can watch Thor and Captain America on their own, and they're not dependent on the Iron
other
Man films
movies,
at
yeah.
all. And that was the sweet spot. But that formula was abandoned when Disney took the reins.
And not
And
only
now
that, Shield couldn't be affected, or Shield was affected by the movies, but it couldn't affect the movies, which was the big rule.
Yeah, that was they swung to the fences for Shield, but I think they botched it because, number one, they made a show called Shield, but it was nothing like Shield.
That being said, that's not my point though. The point is they had the right mentality that yes, you can do whatever the fuck you want on TV that gets inspired by the films, but nothing you do on TV is going to affect the films. Why? Because not everybody's going to watch that TV show who watches the films. And at least then they had that in mind. Right. And that goes along with what you're saying, Paul, is you can adapt these things into several different places. And maybe Shooter did say this quote originally, but I heard it from Stan. So I just wanted to say that.
But you're right. I forgot about Shield. Shield actually would have been a prototypical North American version of what the manga anime industry would have been doing.
Right.
And it's just a question of pulling it off and making it work. You know, the one thing that, you know, we forget in all of this is that there's also different kinds of cinema. So those of you out there who are familiar with French cinema, there's often no real beginning and no ending. What they do is drop you into a moment. And it's a very interesting technique. So an event takes place and people react to the event, end of movie. That's typical of French cinema, or the old French cinema.
Yes, it's
So
It's
that's where
kind
they
of,
stole that concept from.
Well, I mean, it's kind of lazy because it's like, okay, we're doing this so that we can get back to our cafes. Just like that's basically what it kind of.
But
You
it's,
need
it's,
a cigarette break.
but it's not necessarily. I don't think it's ineffective.
No, yeah, that's right. I would say it's not ineffective. I think it's interesting the way that they can actually pull some of it off here and there.
Yeah, and the thing is, because we get so tired of the 3-act format, and the only reason I mention it is that people are intrinsically guessing what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And the French style can often subvert that because you don't know what's going on, because there's not going to be the conclusion. It's not the one that you expect. It just suddenly ends because it's dinner time now. We're done. Well,
Yeah, it's trying to be more. Well, it's like neo-realism, I think, is one of the aspects that they call it, because it's like there's no conclusion to the stories in our life, or at least that's how the French at least view things. When where I am, and for a lot of people I know, they could probably talk about a story that happened to them in a life that actually does have an ending, but also builds off to, oh, this is now the next part of my life. Like, I used to live in this town for a while, then I got older, then I went to college, but I can tell you the story of my time living in this town before I went to college. The French don't use stories like that.
And the thing is, we need something along those lines, because we're being Robert McKeed to death.
Yeah.
It's just, oh my God, we don't need that. We need a more sophisticated way to tell these stories.
Well, it's also a more sophisticated way to hide the formula. Like that's the
yes,
the sign of a great writer and also great director and team, is that you get so invested in what the characters are doing, you're not worried about trying to predict where it's going. You're just invested in the moment as it passes, as it comes. That's where you hide the formula. That's where you're not telegraphing so much to the point where the audience is disengaged and they're like, okay, I'm now 10 minutes ahead of the movie, 15, 20, 30 minutes ahead of the movie. Now I'm playing the waiting game because I know where they're going, and I have to wait for them to get to where I've already landed to. That's not good for an audience. And you have to find a way to do the opposite without making them confused.
And the other way to engage and fool them is to just make it all about inclusivity and no plot, nothing.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.